Hit me.
Welcome to the Senior Rehab Podcast.
The podcast for rehab clinicians that want to better serve older adults.
And now, your host, Dustin Jones.
David Reed, Mr. Voice of the Patient, welcome to the Senior Rehab Podcast. Thanks for your time this morning.
No goodness. Dustin, thanks for having me.
And for the listeners, if we sound a little scratchy, me more than Dave, it's because it's about 6:30 in the morning, and Dave is such a trooper to get up at the butt crack of dawn with me, so I appreciate that.
Oh, hey, no problem. And I'll tell you, if I sound a little bit scratchy, I was coaching a 5-year-old baseball game last night, so the voice may be a little bit gone.
Okay, I was wondering I couldn't tell if you were, up too late out the bar last night or coaching a 5-year-old baseball team, but it sounded pretty similar.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, well, I'm excited to talk with you. We were just chatting it up, and we've been interacting on Twitter for a while. But that's kind of the cool thing about Twitter is you interact with people in that format, and you feel like you get to know them, but you don't really know them. And then, luckily we have a podcast where we can actually talk, and hopefully down the road we'll get to meet in person. So I'm excited to just pick your brain here a little bit more about your story. So let's just kind of start there. If you could give us the quick and dirty on your career up to this point, just kind of hitting the highlights or the big moments that you've had so far.
Yeah, sure. As quickly as we can. So
you got all kinds of time.
I've been practicing as a PT for about 11 years now. Moved to North Carolina from Michigan after I finished my MBA. And I did my MBA because I was completely lost in an administrative role that I had up there, and just wanted to feel like I understood what was going on and could figure that out. So had an opportunity. I've had a few incredible mentors throughout my career. The first one, kind of prior to PT school, had been the president of the Michigan State Board of Physical Therapy. And so, it turned out I came across a job listing online for North Carolina, and he had worked at the state level with the guy that was would be my boss down here.
Awesome.
So yeah, it was a really great connection, and so we picked up, we came down, and we lived in the mountains of Western North Carolina for about 4 years, and it was awesome. I moved to Charlotte about two and a half years ago. After a little bit of hospital consolidation, the hospital that I was working with consolidated positions, and it just wasn't feasible anymore to be there. So we moved to Charlotte. I've been doing a little bit of contract work here and there, but just now getting settled into a new position that's really cool. Dustin, you and I had talked a lot about home health and some of the work that we've been doing there, but I've kind of moved into a more administrative role now, where I'm kind of picking up where home health sort of leaves off. I know, and I don't know if you feel the same, but as a home health therapist, I kind of felt that when the person was no longer able to be on home health, no longer qualified, wasn't homebound, all that stuff. They weren't they also, at the same time, they weren't necessarily ready to go to outpatient or didn't have the means to get there. And so what I'm doing now is we're actually setting up outpatient clinics inside of assisted living centers where, some of these seniors that I'm working with, and it's so much fun. Just absolutely love this population. But some of these folks, they just don't have the means or the ability to get to the outpatient facilities. And so essentially what we're doing is setting up outpatient facilities where they are. And it's been incredible because we've been able to really reduce the instance of falls in a lot of these communities in just the past 3 months.
That's awesome. So you've had quite the journey. So let me just clarify. So you got your MBA after you were a physical therapist?
Yes.
Okay, so you're kind of like a Dr. Ben Fung in a way. He kind of did the same route.
Yeah. Yep. And just to clarify, I'm also only a master. So yeah, goodness, who was it? Never mind. But
It's
we can
you,
probably cut that.
but you are a master clinician, David.
I am a master clinician and possibly a Jedi.
So let's go kind of back to that period of life where you went to get your MBA. What situation were you in, and kind of what was your mental dialogue that said, "Man, I got to go back and get my master's in business administration"?
Well, yeah. So that was kind of a strange life and career transition at the same time. So prior to, things are humming along, but at the same time, healthcare is kind of starting to change. Goodness, it was like 2008 ish. So healthcare is really changing, and a lot more changes on the horizon. And just as a clinician working in a hospital based outpatient setting, just didn't really care for the way that we were going.
Yeah.
Felt like I could help to influence some of that stuff. I felt like it could be done better. So there was an opening, and I leapt at it. Just kind of, tucking both knees and jumping in with both feet. So yeah, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. But it was also kind of a struggle just to kind of understand what was going on. Really understand the business aspect of PT, because again, graduating 11 years ago, I got barely any business in our program. And it's really exciting to see guys like Ryan Smith and some of these guys just going at it right out. It's inspiring. But so I felt like, I was just in over my head. So I wanted to understand the language of business, first of all, and really how to communicate at that level, because I feel like a lot of times, now anyway, kind of looking back, I feel a lot of times clinical people and administrative people are kind of saying the same things, but there's something that's lost in the translation between the two. So that was really the big motivator. But sort of in the meantime, we found out that we were about to have our first son. So just as I was starting up with the program, so it was
Oh my gosh,
a big life decision, like, oh, how are we going to do that? And with an accelerated MBA program, studying, feeding it, and so basically what it ended up being is studying and feeding babies at it was just kind of fun.
Yeah, I've got a buddy in Columbus that's kind of going through the same situation. He's not a physical therapist, but yeah, I can only imagine. So when you got out of that MBA, I'm sure you gained a lot of knowledge and just kind of up through your career have gained a lot just from that administrative role. If you were to talk to someone like me, just kind of the average Joe, staff clinician, what do I need to know as a staff clinician from the business side of things that a lot of people don't know?
As a clinician, I think a lot of times anyway, and I'll speak more from my standpoint. Mm-hmm. I think probably the easiest way to say is that a lot of times as a clinician, I'll operate from instinct and things that I know and, muscle memory, whatever you want to call it. And I'm sure, that's probably not the most kosher thing to say, with some of the evidence-based stuff, but mm-hmm. There's an evidentiary basis for what you're doing. It's just, I really feel the strong pull to go in this way. Mm-hmm. From an administrative standpoint, it's not terribly dissimilar, because you have maybe 70-80% of the information at any given time. Mm. But it's a little bit different. I mean, I think that a lot of times as a clinician, I sort of perceived the administrative folks as a little bit more cold, a little bit more financially motivated. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is that now the way that I guess, let me do this. Let me kind of shift my perspective. As somebody in that administrative role, the way that I see, myself is sort of caring for the business, mm-hmm. making sure that the business is healthy and that, my staff gets to continue to come and do their awesome work every single day. Yeah. And so, I try to communicate it as a clinician to clinicians, but as, from a business standpoint to other business people. And I think, that's been one of the biggest advantages, I think. But as a clinician, it would have been helpful to understand some of the differences in language.
Yeah, that's a good point. That makes me think of my first job out of school is a little outpatient orthopedic clinic in the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia, and it was an awesome gig. But I came out not having a freaking clue of the reality of a small outpatient orthopedic clinic, and in terms of revenue and just productivity and how I should be spending my time and how I could benefit the clinic and just all the stressors that were placed on the clinic with third-party payers and whatnot, and just very ignorant. And now, just having a better idea of how things work, there's a lot of things I wish I could go back and change in how I acted and how I treated and just how I interacted with the management there. But yeah, I think it's a big deal in terms of like the students coming out, having a perspective of being able to kind of see what it's like to be an administrator and understand the struggles and the stressors and just all the stuff that you all have to deal with. I think is a big issue that we should be hitting on for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And Dustin, this is where I'm sure you can kind of identify it. But like as somebody who does some of these interviews, you're talking. I'm kind of thinking like, okay, I really want to ask a question there. So if it's okay,
yeah.
So you were talking about some of the discontent in that position.
Mm-hmm.
How did that sort of motivate some of the decisions that you were making at that time? So, I mean, does that make any kind of sense?
Rephrase that for me.
So, you said, you would have changed some of the things, the way that you interacted with management and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not necessarily, in a bad way or trying to explore, stuff that's not so good. But,
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes the discontent can be a good thing.
Yeah.
And really motivating. But, so I just want to understand how some of that sort of influenced, how you made decisions for your career.
Yeah. So, we're going to go deep, David. I like this.
Sorry.
No, this is good. This is good. This is the gold stuff, as I like to think. So I'm one of those people that went to high school, went to undergrad, went straight to PT school. And, I may have worked, a few summer jobs here and there, but my perception of reality and the value of money was somewhat skewed. And I get out of school, I take this job, and I'm just going to be honest. I felt like I was doing the clinic a favor versus them doing me a favor of hiring me. And I mean, there's lots of factors that go into that. I had my DPT, ATC, CSCS. Like I thought I was a big shot, and I wasn't. And so I went into this position not in humility, but just like I was coming in to do them a favor, and I wasn't there to view the management or my boss as my number one customer. Like they were paying me, I need to make them happy, and I didn't necessarily know how to make them happy, nor was I concerned in the things that I was doing if that was actually making them happy from the administrative perspective. And so as now that I look back on it, the practical things that I would change is just be better with my time, really get into just kind of seeing how cancellation rates and no-shows, affected the production of the clinic, and also just really investing more in the clinic rather than just being concerned about me as a professional. Does that make sense?
Yeah, man, that's that introspection that just kind of has to have time to develop, right?
Yeah, and it was a painful process because I got fired from that job. I mean, it was super humbling because I thought sky's the limit. Had all these letters behind my name coming out of school, and after a year, they're like, we got to let you go. We can't really support another therapist. And that's that's what kind of transitioned me into, like, I took a contract position at a skilled nursing facility and ended up loving it. And then that's what, kind of got me into home health. So I'm thankful for my stupidity back then, but definitely learned a lot from it.
Hey, that's awesome. That's a double bonus.
Yeah.
Now you're doing, now you're working with the geriatrics. You're
Mhm.
you're doing the senior rehab project, and you learned a ton
Yeah.
with and became a whole lot more introspective just because of the one experience. So
Yeah.
huge value.
Yeah. If they, King Physical Therapy in Martinsburg, West Virginia, I want to apologize to Carla, but also thank her
There you
as
go.
well. And I still have a good relationship with them. They're good people. If anyone's out there, solid outpatient clinic. But so you mentioned before kind of your new role.
Yes.
You were in home health and kind of transitioned back into administration and doing the outpatient assisted living facility. So that's kind of a gray area when I think of home health. Just kind of those transitions. It's just such a gray area, and a lot of times, from my experience, the patient doesn't necessarily see the need for the services. So I'm curious, in that assisted living facility, how has that been? Are people seeking out physical therapy, or are you having to really invest in that relationship or change their perceptions of what we do? Like, what's that dynamic been like so far?
Yes to all of it. It's amazing. Yeah, things are moving so fast in these senior facilities too. So yeah, I mean, you're right. A lot of times when I was in home health, I almost felt like I was releasing people without really a safety net, and they felt like they were doing good because we were walking, a bunch, but I was often right there. I think a lot of times though that a lot of these folks, it's kind of two separate populations. So the folks who aren't in like a memory care type unit, understand why they're needing assistance a lot of times. So they've often made the decision with their family, often to live in these facilities. And so it's sort of like an apartment, and so they understand they need some assistance, and that their mobility isn't excellent. A lot of times when we're seeing them, they've had some sort of injury in the recent past, so that there's something that they can point to that they know, okay, I need some help with this. And it's really sort of approaching it, like you'd approach any of our seniors, just with humility, and as a senior member of the community, just with plenty of humility, but also with plenty of understanding, and trying to communicate the value that you can bring, and wanting to help them understand that I'm here, not to give you something else, just another thing to do, or just another activity, but to really help you not fall again, so that you can get down to meet with your girlfriends down, play bridge, or so that you can walk to the lunchroom every day.
Yeah.
Bathe on your own, dress on your own, things like that. Just and they really value that independence. I think as just a 35-year-old person, a lot of times I kind of take it for granted that I can shower and dress and put my socks on by myself,
Yeah.
without anybody needing help, needing to help me. But that's not always the case. With osteoporosis, or multiple orthotrauma history, fractures, hip stuff, and yeah.
Man. So, how long have you been in this administrative role at the assisted living facility?
Yeah, in this role, so we started in the Charlotte market July 1st.
Okay.
So I transitioned just during the summer.
Okay. So let's say, in terms of things that you've already done or have ideas for, what are some practical things that could help reach the people in that assisted living facility, in terms of like any ideas for conferences or balance screening or whatever? Have there been some things that have been really effective?
Well, as long as we're being really honest here, I mostly rip off most of my stuff from the Senior Rehab Project.
Oh, come on.
Well, anyway, it's previous guest. So oh goodness, this is terrible. I should have had a list.
No,
But there
you're
was
good.
the one that just came out this week.
Oh, Becca Georgie,
Yes.
the senior games.
Yeah. So I've had kind of the same struggle. So just yesterday, as I'm listening to that, okay, well let's figure out what's going on here. And you couldn't hear my sound effect of typing on the keyboard. So yeah, I figured it out, and so I'm starting to put together a little bit more high level screening for some of the folks that just feel like, well, I'm able to walk on this walker and stuff like that. So just so they can kind of see like some of the things that they want to be able to do, and to be able to measure themselves against what some of these senior athletes are able to do. So it's things like that, kind of grabbing and stealing those ideas. And I think that's really been a big thing, through the home health, and you'll tweet a lot about, and I hope, please steer me back if you need to, but you'll tweet a lot about Automobile University, but that's awesome. And it's been, almost like another mentor in a way, just being able to hear all of these professionals that, whether they're studying, academically or applying things practically, they're out there and doing it.
Yeah.
And so, you can kind of take what they're doing and incorporate it right away. And I think in a lot of times, whether, especially in a home health type role where you're kind of on an island, that's invaluable. And in this role too, I mean, educating younger clinicians, this is, I'm no expert, so I'll just, and the experts.
It's like the wild, wild west right now. I feel like in geriatrics, where people are trying all kinds of different stuff and, seeing what works. And I'm really thankful just to be able to talk to some of these people and just listen to, what has worked, what has not worked, for them. Yeah. And Becca Georgie, that was an awesome episode. If people haven't listened to it. She basically does these screenings, and is doing a lot of research with the senior games. So these super high level athletes that are in their 80s, 90s, maybe the hundreds, that are just have these amazing capacities. And I'll give a little anecdotal story, I guess. I was doing home health in a few assisted living facilities in Columbus, and they would have happy hours.
Yes.
So, I would schedule my patients, 3 o'clock or so. This is probably terribly unprofessional, but the staff would be like, hey, just hang around for a little bit. So I'd hang around, especially if my wife was working. I don't have any kids, and I'd have a glass of wine or a beer, and I would take off my professional name tag or whatnot, and just kind of be there as Dustin, not the physical therapist. Well, we ended up getting a few referrals for PT, just talking to people and just sharing kind of what I do. And they're like, yeah, I think I need physical therapy. So happy hours may work as well. So
there you go. Well, I'm going to take that one today. But I think that points also just to the personal nature of what we do.
Yeah.
Interacting with people as people, you sort of build that trust.
Yeah. I think that is also a good transition to some exciting work that you're doing. I mentioned in the intro, Mr. Voice of the Patient podcast. Tell us about that. Why Voice of the Patient? Why would you start a podcast about that?
I mean, I think that kind of goes back to, what we were talking about earlier, some of the discontent with seeing the way that healthcare is changing. A long time ago, it's been sort of a common thread, that I, throughout my career, maybe throughout my life, that I just don't like to see. I don't like to remain content when I just don't see something that I don't feel is right. Yeah. So seeing the healthcare is changing, seeing all this stuff, and feeling like, there's so much focus on the system and, the clinician, and as a clinician, my skills, and really, kind of looking inward, from the operations standpoint, and not necessarily paying as detailed attention, and trusting that those skills were just there, for for the patient treatment, and maybe the manual skills were, but in my head, and I think in a lot of in the heads of a lot of my colleagues, we really had productivity in the brain, and sort of whoever my boss was at the time, just, okay, this is what I've got to do next. This is what so kind of having my mind there instead of where it really needed to be. And I found that kind of refocusing some of that stuff and really just kind of being there with the patient in that time. Clinically, I felt like my outcomes and some of that stuff was a little bit better.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of really started to take off. So, I started to learn to compartmentalize a little bit. And then, goodness, it was really the home health thing, kind of being sort of on an island, and, alone in the clinic for really probably the first time in my career, just having had a team around me to bounce ideas off of and to listen to and to have conversations with. You just don't have that. Kind of having that desire to talk with other people, listening to podcasts, but also wanting to have that conversation, wanting to ask some of those questions, and wanting to do something different and contribute at the same time. So I felt like I'm, maybe not the best clinician out there, but I'm really good at talking to people and probably better at listening.
Amen to that.
This is the most talking I've done in a long time, Justin. You can kind of see with asking some questions here earlier that, that's more of my tendency.
I like it. If anyone has not listened to the voice of the patient, I highly encourage it. Just several fascinating stories from the patients. Jerry Durham was on there. If anyone knows Jerry Durham, he always provides some entertainment for sure and some thought-provoking statements. But I'm curious, just, with the episodes that you've done so far, what's been the most surprising interview?
The most surprising, I've probably got to go back to the very first one.
Really?
Oh yeah. And that was Karen Nicole Smith. And it was, it wasn't that she said anything, shocking, or I guess technically that would be the second episode, because I wanted to test out my microphone, I guess, so I put it on an introduction.
Yeah.
So, talking with her, I was kind of inventing the process. I mean, I had, talked with you, and I had talked with Jerry a little bit, but, really trying to understand the mechanics of things on my own. But, Karen Nicole Smith, she was probably the first patient that I'd talked to in a very long time about healthcare stuff that wasn't a PT patient. So she had all kinds of stuff going on with dialysis and stuff like that. And, she's up in Ontario, Canada, outside of Toronto, I believe. And so, just the way that they were doing stuff at her hospital, I think it was Kingston General. So yeah, I mean, just the way that they were doing some of the stuff and really kind of progressing, where I felt like, I wanted to have a hand in helping healthcare to go there. They were doing some of that stuff. So, going back to listen to some of her comments, I do that a lot. Kind of when I get stuck.
Yeah. I think my favorite one so far, I'm not going to pick, it's hard to pick one. I think the one with Jerry, I really loved, because I view you all as kind of like the really big patient advocates and very, adamant about building the relationship and how that can impact the course of care in a positive manner. And just to hear, both of you all just kind of go back and forth and talk and discuss and just how conversational it was. I really enjoyed that.
And nobody got fired up at all.
Yeah, never. I don't think he dropped the F-bomb. I was kind of surprised, but he may. I can't remember, but.
Well, there's also skill in editing.
Yeah, I'm gonna call Jerry out right now and tell him he needs to come on the show. I've mentioned it to him a while back, but he got pretty busy, I think. But yeah, those patient perspectives. I know, like, there's a lot of talk online of, why are we so focused on listening to the patient? Like what's everyone talking about? It's simple. You just listen to what they say. But having those perspectives, just for me, maybe I'm just stupid. I don't know, but your podcast, and then I've done a couple episodes with Peony, my girl from Columbus, and then Lisa Mac and Cheese, Lisa Maxura. And man, just to talk to people that don't think how you think, and to hear their perspective of how it felt whenever they, went through whichever, setting that they went through, it just helps me get a better perspective of, what has this patient been through that's sitting in front of me, this person, and how can I adjust my treatments? How can I adjust my words, how I interact with them? So it's a great experience for them, and for me, the therapist as well. So, man, keep doing what you're doing. It's needed.
Yeah, well, if I can, because what you're saying there, I want to kind of tie a couple things together that we had already talked about.
Yeah.
When you were just kind of being at the happy hour, building that relationship with some of these people. That's not the first time that they had thoughts about, goodness, I can't do this or that, or I could really use some help with this. So, but it was that somebody took the time to sit down and just kind of identify with them on their own level. Probably not the best idea to, go have some beers with somebody at 10 o'clock in the morning, but, you can do that in other ways.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think, again, throughout my career, I've had patients who don't speak a lick of English, and you have to find a way to communicate with them somehow. Oftentimes it's through a translator. But at the same time, there's so much that's communicated non-verbally, whether it's through expression or through, touch or, things like that. There's so much that's communicated. And I think that instead of, kind of thinking about it that way, probably the most tangible, that's where the relationship is built, and that's where you're going to kind of get the insights that you need to be able to apply the specific clinical skills that you need to apply, that they're looking for.
That's a good point.
That's kind of, I guess, the parallel that I wanted to draw.
Yeah, and that's so true. And I think about, like, especially a young therapist or a PT student. It's hard to grasp what a lot of these people have been through, especially, say, if the student or the new grad is going through, acute care or home health or skilled nursing facility. Like, you have no idea what these people have been through. The years and years of doctor's visits, of, maybe getting 3 to 4 minutes with the doctor. Some of them, the countless visits to the emergency room where they're screened for all the big red flags, and they're sent home saying, well, you're safe, you're going to live, but still no answers to their issues. Or the countless number of visits, to PT clinic where the therapist may, have spent, 15, 20 minutes, and they're kind of handed off to the PTA that kind of took them through the routine. And just to kind of get, I think, as you talk to more people, as you grow in your career, just getting that perspective of the journey that these people have been on just changes everything. And then you realize just how special and just how different it is that if you take even 20 minutes just to listen to a person, that may be the first time they've experienced that in the healthcare setting. Like that just, once I realized that just blew my mind and made me see that this is worth it. I mean, I may not be able to bill for it, but it's valuable, and it's definitely helpful to the patient, and they definitely appreciate it.
Sure. And kind of trying to step into that more administrative role, or I guess the role that I see myself in. But to bridge that concept to the clinician, yeah, it is valuable, but it's valuable to that patient. That patient sees the value in it. As a clinician, you're going to see the value too, which will provide, likely financial return. And Jerry and Andrew talk about it a lot on their new podcast.
It's Healthcare Disruption Podcast for anyone that hasn't heard of that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's good, and you need to listen to it. The thing is that they talk about exactly this concept. You listen to that patient, you hear them probably for the first time in a long time, like you said, and that translates necessarily into value, because that person not only buys into you, buys into the skill that you're providing, and is more likely to follow the instructions that you give. And you as a good clinician will are guiding them along that evidence, that route of evidence-based care.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's there is that link.
Yeah. So let's talk about that link. You mentioned evidence-based care, and so we want to be informed. We want our research to inform our treatments, but then we also want our patients to inform these treatments. And it's kind of these two ends that it seems like some people are super far on the right or super far on the left in terms of the social media discussions. And I think to respond to that, you wrote an awesome blog post. Don't beat your patient with the science stick. Could you kind of give us a synopsis of that?
Yeah, I think that I forget why I wrote that, but there was something going on, a discussion that I was having, and the difficult piece is that again, it's kind of coming down to translation. Something getting lost in translation, like as folks engaged in the providing of physical therapy, we like to read about that stuff. We like to listen to other people talk about physical therapy, or healthcare in general. And so, a lot of times I think our language sort of gets really focused on that. And so, I can remember a lot of times it's just a natural thing, kind of talking with patients about, 35% of people, respond this way. And, I don't know, I'm just kind of reaching here, but, getting really deep into data, and, having to step back and realize that people don't care about data as much as I do. I enjoy reading a spreadsheet, but most people are not that way. And so, understanding that and wanting to, communicate on a level that we can build mutual understanding, and needing a catchy title. Sorry. Just wanting to not beat patients with sticks.
Yeah. So say you have a patient that comes in, they have pain, and they watch the Olympics, and they saw all those red circles on the swimmers, and they want that.
Mm-hmm.
How would you handle that situation if you disagree with that treatment? And we're talking about cupping here. So how do you handle that dynamic?
Well, and I think it kind of depends. It depends on the relationship that you already have with that person.
Mm-hmm.
If it's somebody that's relatively new, I'm probably talking more about, Michael Phelps as a high level athlete, and that kind of being that last little bit, but we've got a lot to work to get there.
Mm-hmm.
If it's somebody that I have a relationship with, and especially with cupping, I may just kind of, throw it out there like, well, the last time that you had a hickey, what did you do with it? Did you, show it off to everybody? Or, how much did it help you? Did your neck feel awesome? But, and just to kind of draw that parallel, that's kind of what it does. It just draws a bunch of, blood vessels and stuff to the surface. And maybe I'm ignorant and haven't read enough of the, thousands of years of research on cupping, but
oh, Hickey, I didn't hear that one. Of all the critiques that were going on the internet, I didn't come across the Hickey.
You do that, well, like that. Yeah, that's super classy.
Yeah.
Keeping it classy.
Yeah,
it's at 7 a.m.
It's a situation that it's a tough one for me not necessarily in home health. I think in the skilled nursing facility that I was in for that short-term contract is, the patient beliefs of, they've had ultrasound or they've had heat packs and E-stim and all this stuff for years, anytime they've had pain. And that was their therapy. They went to get those modalities. And back then, I didn't even listen to their desires. I just said, no, there's no evidence to support that to improve your pain, and we'll do something different. And I was definitely more in that kind of authoritarian role. And now I definitely kind of take a step back, and I'll definitely entertain those requests, and even do them sometimes, but just try focusing on building that trust, building that relationship, so I can guide that treatment in a way that is definitely more evidence-based. But it's difficult. It's not like a hard line for me. It's kind of this gray area that it depends with each person, which could be just a cop-out for me saying that, but I just struggle with it.
And I think, too, that patients tend to understand, and the way that I'd like to approach it is, I like to tell folks, I don't like to introduce everything on the first day. Let's do one or two things, a couple things I think can help you the best right now and give you the most relief right away. Yeah. And we'll add other stuff as we need to, as things kind of level off and you're not getting better as quickly as you want to. So, let's hold off on some of the, the ultrasound and stuff like that, because I don't know how that's going to necessarily affect what we're going to do. And I don't want to blur those things so that I can give you the best of what I have, the best analysis that I can give.
Yeah.
And I think that folks understand that and see that, and to be honest with you, I can smear gel on a person with the best of them. I'm really good at smearing things. I make a mean peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But when folks see that you can that you care about them, and that you want to make sure that you're focusing on what's best for them, I think that's kind of that first step. And that you get down the road. Oftentimes you don't need to, but there's some folks that are just so focused on it that a week into it, okay, let's add it. Let's focus on getting away from it, because you unless you have one of these machines at home, it's not going to be a long-term solution. But fine, we can add it now. We understand how the initial stuff affected you.
Yeah, that's a good point. That I don't want to belabor the point, but that makes me think of that first outpatient job I took. I mean, just kind of circle back around to that part of our conversation. I remember I would get evaluations, and they would give me their complaints, and they would ask about certain modalities that I just got out of PT school. The research was pretty clear. There's kind of mixed results, or not good outcomes with using certain things, and they would come to me wanting pain relief. And I wouldn't provide it. I wouldn't provide what they wanted, and I wanted to provide what I thought was best for them. And in the outpatient setting, I didn't realize this. This is why I was a terrible employee. I didn't see just how important that first interaction is in building trust and building relationship, and just giving them a snippet of what they want to reduce their pain. And to give them hope, and using my services or the clinic services. And my cancellation rates, my no-show rates after that first visit were pretty high. I don't remember the exact numbers, but when I would reflect, that was definitely a big part of it, because right from the gate, I wouldn't give them what they wanted, and I wasn't able to reduce their pain either, because my skills weren't that great with the other tools that I would use. But I just completely shut them off from the get go, and they wouldn't come back. And I can't blame them for it. Now when I think about it.
Well, and goodness, now sort of practicing that skill of reflection. I honestly, when we were having that discussion, I think that was another Twitter discussion, but kind of thinking about it now, I will probably change the way that I'm doing stuff, especially within that first treatment or two. Kind of instead of flipping it around to let's do what I want first, let's do what you want first. Because understanding in some of your previous talks too about pain, and understanding that pain and nociception are different things, and that pain is kind of the brain's interpretation of and the emotional experience of a sensation.
Yeah.
Kind of getting something or having something that you can kind of grab onto and anchor to, I think might be a little bit more valuable even than understanding some of the basic movements that I think long term will probably help a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I think as of today, I may change a few things.
Awesome.
Use the firmness of my stance and that.
I'm good for something, I guess. All right. Well, let's transition, wrap things up. Won't be respectful of your time. So the quick questions. Your responses don't have to be quick by any means, but let's do this. So, if you could talk to the 25-year-old David, what would you tell him? What advice would you give him in terms of professional advice?
Well, I think the first thing that I tell him is buckle up. It's going to be fun and fast, but I think just right there, really look at and develop your ability to self-criticize and look at what you're doing and be willing to change. Based on what you're learning and understanding and hearing. And just try it out.
Yeah, that's good. What's been, one of your favorite continuing education courses that you've taken in the past 5 years?
I've been thinking about that, and I know that we're not supposed to practice, but I've been thinking about that question in particular.
Cheater.
Yeah, right. In the real world, you do get to cheat, though. It's not a closed book test.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think the most value, I've really enjoyed and appreciated some of the patient communication type courses that I've taken. I think it's just an interest that I have, but I think the most value that I've gotten is really some of the self-study. Reading books to kind of build some of that knowledge and kind of challenging myself. I think. Listening, whether that's listening to podcasts, and not just this one. That there's a ton of good ones out there, and trying new ones, reading books, and doing a lot of that self study and kind of pushing myself. I think has been where a lot of the biggest value has been.
Yeah, and I'll link out to your blog post. The customer service, please hold your call, is very important to us.
Well, that wasn't mine. That was actually Jerry wrote that.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, I see it, by Jerry Durham. All right, I'll include that because he just dropped all kinds of books that would be helpful for, especially pertinent to our conversation and the podcast that you're doing. So let's do this from two ends. First, from your administrative role, what are some of your favorite tools or technology that help you with your job?
Excel.
Yeah.
I just like to see things. I'm really visual and hands-on. I like to be able to manipulate some of that stuff, and so kind of being able to see some of the as much visually as I can is good. Mm-hmm. From that standpoint, that's pretty much.
Yeah, you definitely got your MBA, didn't you?
Yeah. The data nerd comes in. Yeah. That's the point where he can kind of really I can be the data nerd that I am,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of translating some of that information is where
Yeah. What about from the clinical perspective?
Yeah, well, we all have our phones, and they're rumored to be smart. Um, but I have it's like the kind of just the anatomy apps, so that kind of again, it's kind of going to some of that visual nature, where I can show people this is how the joint is supposed to work. These are all the muscles that kind of stabilize that joint. I don't know, talking about the shoulder and the passive stability of the shoulder, and how that kind of affects things, and how where I think the pain is kind of coming from mechanically, and why we're doing what we're doing. If it only gives folks kind of the confidence that I may on some level know what I'm talking about, I think that's provided a little bit of value.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, let's say we're at CSM. You have every geriatric rehab clinician in the room, 30 to 60 seconds of their attention. What would you want them to know?
That I'm probably not the most qualified person to be talking to them at this point, but that the things that their patients say matter. Even if it doesn't seem related, listen and understand how what they're telling you is affecting them, because I think that we've all had the experience where we go in, we're talking with goodness, just another person, not just a doctor, and we forget half the list of what we were going to say. Mm-hmm. But the things I think that tend to bubble up to the surface tend to be the most important to them.
Yeah.
So if it's coming up, even if it seems sort of benign to you, it's important to them on some level, and to recognize that value.
Yeah. Could not agree more. I appreciate you sharing your experiences, because now that I know you a little better, I really value what you say, because you've kind of been on both sides of the spectrum in terms of administrative role, numbers, revenue, just Excel spreadsheet geeking out over there, and then on the other end of of just listening to your patients, taking what they say, making sure that they are understood, and using that to inform your treatment, so you can influence your geeky Excel spreadsheet. So so just thank you for doing that. I want to encourage you to keep podcasting, because we need it. We need to hear just different perspectives on how we can care for people. So for people that have not listened to David's podcast, you can go to thevoiceofthepatient.org. All the links that we mentioned will be in the show notes. You're also writing a MedBridge article, I believe, that I'll be sure to share at some point, or add it in the show notes as well. So just lots of good content that David Reed is producing. I encourage you all to check out, and I will share it in all the social media streams. If people want to pick your brain, David, what would be the best way to do so?
Well, then I would probably assume that they're pretty bored, but they do. It's at DReedPT on Twitter, or you can email me at DReedPT. It's DREED, my first initial and last name, PT at outlook.com. For Twitter.
Okay.
And then just to kind of, I'm sorry, Dustin, really quick, just to add to that, if you're thinking about doing podcasts, if you're thinking about, writing a blog, it's inexpensive, but do it. It really contributes to the conversation. Even if you don't feel like, you're experienced enough, that's kind of part of it, getting out there, asking those questions, and trying to find answers to it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, honestly, with this podcast and, with your blog, you and I gain more than anybody, which is incredible. So I think, just to piggyback off what you're saying, if someone wants to have an active learning process, this is a great way to do it, but just do it in a manner that you would do it even if no one listens or no one reads it. And just do it with humility. Just don't try and be, someone you're not, and just be authentic. And it's incredible what comes out of it. So yeah, so keep doing what you're doing, sir. At dreedpt, thevoiceofthepatient.org. And yeah, we'll have to get you back on, see how things are going, and see how effective that happy hour was at the assisted living facility.
Implemented today.
All right. Thanks, David.
All right. Thanks, Dustin.